Hey everybody, this is Poppy Dennison. I am here this evening with Rick Reed, Shae Connor, and Tere Michaels for our very first Dreamweavers discussion where we ask our favorite authors about their books and life and writing and whatever else comes to mind. So we will go ahead and get started tonight. The first thing I wanted to ask these wonderful authors about is their regions. We happen to have authors with us tonight who are from very different areas of the country. Rick is from Seattle, Shae is in Atlanta, and Terry's in the Northeast, so very different regions. What do you guys think about where you live affecting your writing, or does it?
I'll go first.
Oh, go ahead, Rick.
I'm sorry. It really does. Where I live really does affect my writing. I'm not a writer that likes to. Maybe I'm a lazy writer, and I don't like to do a lot of research. So, but I also find there's a lot of authenticity if I'm writing about where I actually live, and I know the streets, and I know the locations, and I don't have to think about it. If somebody's walking around the corner, what street they're turning on, and so the two major cities I've lived in most of my life have been Chicago and Seattle, and most of my books are set in either of those cities. So yeah, it makes a big difference to me.
Shae, how about you?
Well, I've lived in Georgia all my life, except for, as I talked about before we started the chat, my 3.5 years of exile in southern New Jersey. But I feel the same way. I know the state in general and Atlanta specifically, so when I talk about a location, it's really there. It might not be, I might change the name of a business or something like that, but I know the area and I know the distances and I know, but even beyond that, I know the people. I've lived in the South all my life and I know how they talk and how they think and the different types of accents and the different phrasing. Southern phrasing makes its way into my stories a lot, and I think it adds a lot of authenticity to everything when you're writing fiction. You have to have that base in reality, and I think knowing the area that you're writing about, whether it's personally or you do a lot of research, is really important for that.
How about you, Miss Terry?
Well, I'm going to ignore Shae's comment about New Jersey. I'm just going to let it roll off my back. I've lived in the metro New York City area for pretty much my entire life except for 6 months in LA. And it definitely informs all of my books, my characters. I think my sense of humor, I have a very Northeast sense of humor. And that's my comfort zone is dialogue and humor. So it absolutely reflects where I love. I love it here. I have no New Jersey jokes to tell. I love New York City, and so this is where my characters live because they love it too.
That's great. So do you write books that are set in other regions, or have you ever tried and it not work, or you just have always stuck with where you know? Anyone?
Well, I've done stories. I've said a couple stories I love New York City too. I've said a couple stories there. I have one actually set in Chicago, one of my short stories. But of course, I've only published 2 novels so far, and they're both set in Georgia. One of them primarily in Atlanta, and one primarily on Tybee Island off the coast near Savannah. And I am more comfortable writing locations that I know personally like that. Like I said, it adds so much to it, but especially now, you can get on Google Maps and pull up Street View and look at the building on the street that you're looking at. You're looking, even if you've never been there. I think that makes it easier to get those details in there. I like to write about cities that I enjoy. I would love to write a story set in Seattle because I love Seattle. Maybe I'll have to get Rick in on that.
Yeah, I'll be happy.
Road trip.
Yeah, road trip. Well, okay, I don't think I'd drive it, but yeah, research trip.
It's a long drive from Georgia.
Yeah.
So, Rick, how about you? Have you ever tried a different setting that didn't really work out for you, or have you pretty much stuck to Chicago and Seattle?
I have pretty much stuck to Chicago and Seattle. Some of my books are set. I grew up in a small Ohio river town, in far east Ohio near Pittsburgh, but very small. And I have set a couple things there, like my recent psychic thriller, Third Eye, is set there. But I call it Fawcettville just because I don't want it to be the actual name of the city, which is East Liverpool, Ohio. But I like it to be, I changed the name of the town because it's, I can make mistakes then. and it's kind of, I'm going by memory because I don't get back there that often. And it's changed a lot. And I think the town I write about is the town I grew up in, not the one that's there now. And the only other thing I can think of that I've ever written that's outside of Chicago or Seattle and this small town setting is I wrote a vampire novel that's called Blood Sacrifice, and part of it takes place in 1950s New York City, which I had to do a lot of research on, and the vampires lived in an abandoned subway station, so that was kind of interesting, but it was very all imagination and in my head. So, but mostly I try to stick with what I know. Write what you know.
Yeah. Terry, how about you? Have you given it a whirl anywhere else?
Oddly enough, and this wasn't rehearsrsed, I have one book set in Chicago and one book set in Seattle. So,
how about I did my research and I knew that. How about we can go with that?
That was amazing, Poppy.
So
yeah, I did a character in Seattle, and then there was half of it took place in LA, which I lived there, so I felt comfortable writing about that. So yeah, that's very strange. But yes, I've written books in other places. But everybody always moves to New York. I'm just saying.
Eventually, they all make it there.
Eventually, they all move to New York.
So, interesting question for you guys. Do you have a book that you wish you would have written? Any favorites that you're like, oh, I wish I would have. I wish that one was mine. Have I stumped you?
Yeah, I didn't ask that question before, so very good. There are so many that come to mind that I think, gosh, I wish I had written that. I wish I'd had that idea first. It's hard to do. Most of my favorite books, which is a pretty long list, I would probably put in that category, just because like I said, I'm jealous. I'm envious that the author had the opportunity to write that story, and I wish I had been able to get into that. It's hard to just pick out one, though.
Yes.
That's tough.
Rick, what about you?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't. I'm thinking no. There's a lot of books I really, really love and admire, but did I wish I wrote them? I don't think so. I almost feel like that would be thing that's almost like a prelude to plagiarism or something. I don't know. It just seems like it would be disrespectful to the actual author.
Yeah.
I want to leave it with them.
Terry?
Well, I'm glad that they wrote it so I could read it. If it was my favorite, I'm glad that I didn't have to come up with that. So yeah, I think that's I'm glad that they wrote it. Hopefully somebody thinks the same thing about my books.
Absolutely. Well, I can guarantee you one person does. So, what do you guys like to read? I know we always talk about kind of the writing process and all that, but when you guys are really sitting down and you're like, I want to read, what do you turn to? Terry, we'll start with you on this one.
And now you'll hear my lament.
No.
Because of my writing schedule the past year and a half, I really don't read much unless it's my monthly book club. So I read kind of a selection of bestsellers and, YA or things like that. And once a year I read J.R. Ward's Brotherhood book. And that's pretty much my reading schedule at this point, sadly. I hope that things slow down a little bit after this year so I can get back into reading again. So that's my sad story.
Oh, that is sad because I know as writers we tend to all really love to read, so I know that's hard.
I miss it.
Yeah. Shae, what about you? What do you turn to read?
I read mostly romance and mostly gay romance. I have, a little bit. I like nonfiction, especially like American history type nonfiction, and I'll read online a lot. But when I really, just need to relax and just kind of let go and relax, I go back rather than a new book. I'll go back and pick up one of my favorites and reread a book that I've read a dozen times. But it's just, it's comfort. It's kind of comfort food. I know the story. It doesn't matter. It's just I love the story so much I want to revisit it over and over. So I do quite a bit of that when I'm on a writing schedule too. For the first time for the last year, I've actually had a writing schedule, and it makes it tough. Makes it tough to read as much.
Yeah. Rick, how about you? What do you turn to?
Well, I have to say I do make it a point to read constantly. That's been a lifelong habit of mine. So whenever I have a moment of downtime, I'm reading something. I read when I run on the treadmill at the gym. I read before I go to sleep at night. I read when I get up in the morning, and then the rest of the time is for everything else. I find I probably read mostly thriller, horror, kind of dark stuff, because I think my writing has gravitated a lot toward more light stuff. And I don't when I read, I don't think I want to read quite the same thing that I'm writing, because I think it kind of influences me. So I love like the British mystery writer Ruth Rendell, who also writes psychological suspense, as Barbara Vine, and Patricia Highsmith, who wrote the Ripley books and Strangers on a Train. She has a very warped kind of view of the world, and I really enjoy that. So I would say what I mostly read is a lot of dark stuff, and then I mix in a little nonfiction, mostly biography and weird stuff. Like right now I'm reading a book called Full Service, which is about a guy who lived in Hollywood in the 1940s and worked at this gas station, and he facilitated all of these sexual liaisons between stars and studio people, and it's really interesting, and it's really dishy and dirty. But it's really kind of fun and a nice escape.
Okay, so hopefully this will be an easier question for you. This is actually from one of our readers who wants to know, if you could cast your characters in the Hollywood adaptation of your book, who would play your main character? So whichever book kind of jumps to mind. I know you guys all have quite a few. So.
Well, I actually told Travis that if we made a movie of Unfortunate Son, that he would of course have to play the lead, because, I mean, I've already cast him. He's on the cover, right? Exactly.
Oh, that was an easy one. I think you kind of got a cheat answer on that one.
I cheated a little bit, just a little bit.
Rick, how about you? Do you have anybody for that one?
Well, the book that's being re-released by Dreamspinner Press Publications in March, I Am, which is my serial killer thriller about a killer who preys on gay men on online sites. He looks the opposite of what you'd expect a killer to look like, because he's blonde and innocent looking, and I always and this was the only book of mine that's actually been optioned for a movie, and I always I thought Macaulay Culkin would be perfect as the serial killer.
Oh, that's a good one. How about you, Terry?
I don't touch casting when it comes to the Faith, Love, and Devotion series. No, not at all. But I will say that for the first time in 14 books, the Who Knows the Storm, the Vigilante series that I started, I had two very specific pictures on my desktop, and one was Matt Bomer with a beard, and the other one was an actor named Colton Haynes in an underwear ad he did, bless him, and that sat on my desktop, and that, for the first time, I've never done that before with pictures, actually. I usually have vague face claims, but this was specifically those two pictures sat on my desktop when I was writing that book, and will gladly sit on my desktop as I finish the sequel.
Oh, thanks, boys. Gladly let that see. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. So. So if you were not a writer and you weren't writing books, what would you do for a living?
Well, I have a day job, so my day job is editing, so, I'm already doing that. I've actually thought about, whether I would ever want to write full-time, and unless I suddenly hit upon something really magic and have a huge, huge bestseller, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I like my day job. It's, it's pretty secure. It's got good benefits, and it's different because it's editing and it's scientific material. It's so different from the creativity of writing that it helps keep that separated in my mind. And there's not the pressure that there would be if I was trying to make a living off of writing full time. Since I'm single, I don't have, I have to take care of everything myself. So it's just not good for me to have that kind of. I like the security of having the day job to back me up.
How about you, Terry?
I actually write full-time. I do have clients that I do other writing for. I do marketing and I do web content and things like that. So that's sort of my side writing job, but I pretty much write full-time at this point. In the past, I've worked in offices and things like that. It wasn't really a career. I worked in television, that sort of thing. If I wasn't a writer, I hope this is not a cop-out, but I would teach writing at some sort of pleasant Vermont liberal arts place, that I could wear sweaters every day, and it would always be fall. So that would be my alternative career.
Good luck with that.
Specific one, and I like it, yeah. So, Rick, how about you?
Well, I think the first thing that came to mind is I would be a chef, because cooking is my other passion, and I've often wondered, well, should I have? I mean, I would always be a writer, but sometimes I look back and think, well, maybe I should have gone to culinary school when I was in my 20s and followed that passion because I love it so much. But maybe I wouldn't love it as much if it was an everyday job that I was working 50 hours a week at. But yeah, that came right to mind when you said if there was something else you could do, it would be cooking.
That doesn't surprise me with you. You always when you post those photos of your meals, they're always so beautiful and well thought, and I just am like, Rick, invite me to dinner.
Well, if you have an invitation.
Oh, I appreciate that. So, okay, so this question is more writer to writer for you here. I know sometimes for me there's certain types of scenes that are more difficult for me to write. Is there a certain kind of scene that's harder for you? The love scenes, action scenes, or things that are really more of the dialogue based or narrative based? Is there any that are more challenging for you? Rick, we'll start with you this time.
Okay, two things came to mind. The first is sex scenes, which I don't find fun to write at all. It's hard to make the passion come through on the page because words can't do sex justice, I guess. So I find that is usually a struggle. And the other thing is writing necessary kind of bridge parts of books where you just have to get the action moved from one point to the next, and it's not all that interesting. Everything can't be, paced at 100%. You have to have a sort of downtime, and it bores me a little bit, and I don't want to spend the time on that, but sometimes I have to, and I muddle through that. So those were the two things that came to mind.
Shae, how about you?
It is commonly known among my beta readers that the first draft they read will include the line "sex scene inserted here."
No pun.
I'm so
You already know, it's just the lines, like really long sex scene, chapter 11. I always write that last. I have to get through all the plot things, and then I can go back and think about what each sex scene means in terms of the narrative and the emotions and things like that. But in the first draft, I just skim over that and then go back to it, which is why I don't write erotica, and that's the big secret that you know about me now.
Shae, how about you?
I go with mostly what Rick said. What I think of it as connective tissue, the pieces that bridge from one section to another. I tend to write out of order a lot. I don't necessarily write beginning to end. I usually write like the climactic scene or the ending scene, maybe like halfway through writing a book, or even the shorter stories. And then I have to write the pieces that get me from what I've written up here to what I've written down here. And I had the same problem. It's, you have to write them, you have to get them from point A to point B, but they're not necessarily exciting things to write. I tend to put a lot of dialogue in those spots to fill those spots, even if it may not actually drive the plot, but it'll be maybe at least more interesting than just having them, walk from one house to the other or whatever. But yeah, that's usually where my trouble comes in, is in those little bridge bits.
So I have another reader question for you. Where is one place you want to visit that you haven't been before? Terry, we'll start with you this time.
London. I have not traveled a lot outside the U.S., so I would like to go to London and write it off because I write a book there. And then they move to New York City, but I really want them to start in London.
As long as they move to New York City.
As long as it's easier for me, and I appreciate it.
Yes. Shae, how about you? Any place you wanted to visit?
Ireland. My heritage, my family background is very heavily Irish, and so I've been trying. I'm like Terry. I haven't traveled outside the country much, so I've been trying to get to Ireland. There are a lot of places I would love to visit, but that's definitely first on the list. And I might write a book there too.
A good plan. Yes.
They can move to Atlanta. They can move to Atlanta.
Well, I have a long list, but what's on my bucket list, and we're planning this now actually for a milestone birthday, I won't say which one, that's coming up in about 3.5 years, is I really want to go to Sicily, which is where my maternal side of my family is from, and I know exactly the town they're from and everything, and it's a little village, and before I die, I really want to visit that town where my people came from.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So, an interesting question that was posed to us for tonight is, do you dream? And if so, do you have any recurring dreams or nightmares? Shae, we'll start with you on that fun one.
Yes and yes. It's kind of I dream very often, and I remember them. They're usually completely nonsensical, even if they make sense occasionally during the dream when I wake up. But my recurring dreams has actually changed over time. My biggest phobia is tornadoes, and I used to have, when I was stressed, I would have tornado dreams. I'm trapped in a tornado. There's a tornado coming. I get it. After a while, when I started traveling a lot for work, I started having nightmares about not being able, have to go to the airport and I'm not packed, or I'm going international and I don't have my passport and that kind of thing. And then when I started writing and started going to conferences, now I've got to do a panel in 5 minutes and I haven't even taken a shower yet, and I can't find my room so I can get ready. So I still have the tornado dreams, but it's kind of funny that I've seen my recurring dreams change over time like that with what's going on in my life. Which is not always a fun thing. I'd rather just stick with the tornadoes.
Rick, how about you?
It's eerie what Shae said. It hasn't happened as much lately, but as a child, one of my recurring nightmares were tornadoes. So that just, like, my mouth dropped open when you said that. And then you said about having dreams about missing a flight or something like that. I've done that before too, and I can remember one in particular when I was much younger and I had to go to another city for a job interview and I had to get up early for the flight. And I dreamed in real time that I was up and looking at the clock and realizing, the flight has already taken off. I completely missed it, but I was dreaming, and it was so real. And the other thing that's weird about me that I haven't run across a lot of people who have these is I have very, very funny dreams. And I will wake up the person next to me in bed laughing hysterically, and I find it very hard to stop laughing. And it's I don't know if that's from stress and it's a way of releasing it, but but I've had these funny dreams all my life, and sometimes they turn into fiction. And sometimes when I think of them later in the morning, it's like, that was really stupid. There's nothing funny about that. So that's my dream story.
Terry?
All the dreams that I remember have something to do with me being anxious over something. I am really boring in that I can go to a dream dictionary and everything I look up will be like, you're anxious about something, you're stressed about something, you're possibly anxious about something. And just everything in the entire dream will be about that. And I go, well, thank you, I knew that. So, yeah, my dreams are not very creative. They're just my body unable to give me enough stress when I'm awake. They just like to remind me that I'm stressed out while I'm sleeping. So that's the word.
Not very nice of them.
It's not nice.
Can I say one more thing about dreams?
Absolutely.
I've always wondered where dream people come from. Not the ones that we know in our lives, but like fully formed people that, as far as I can tell, I've never met, never seen, but they're there as real people in my dreams. And it's always been something that's kind of fascinated me. Where do these people come from?
Same place our characters come from, I think. It's the same well. I was also going to say one of the things that I have recurring in my dreams is locations. I'll have, a house, and it's not an actual house that I live in, or it'll be partly like one of our old houses, and I'll have totally different recurring dreams that take place in the same location. I mentioned that to my sister once, and she was like, "You have what?" No. So apparently, I don't know if that's a weird thing to have recurring locations that show up in your dreams that are not real locations. I don't know.
It's a sign of stress.
Probably, yes.
No, I've looked it up. It's a sign of stress. You build houses in your head that are representations of your stress, and so depending on what rooms you go into, it's what you're worried about. Yes, I'm Saturday next
Scary when we need it.
Right. Just send me the room, and I'll let you know what that means.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly. So let's see here. Do you have any strange writing habits, anything that you're really quirky about as part of your writing process? Terry, come on, I know you've got to have something.
I can't start writing until I have a title and everybody is named. I write to about 12,000 words, and then I start working backwards from the end. And I write in my bedroom and ignore the beautiful office behind me. That's pretty much my quirks right there.
Those are good ones. How about you, Shae?
I write, I've mentioned already, I write out of order, which a lot of people think is really strange. I write my synopsis and blurb usually first. People are always saying, they finish the book, oh no, now I have to write a blurb. It's not. I usually write those first. And I usually have to revise them once the story's done. Obviously, I don't end up finding that. I'm never going to follow them exactly, but I do those first. And I thought of something else, and now I can't think what it is. There was something else. What was the other thing? I write. Like she talked about. Terry talked about writing the first 12,000 and then working. I usually write the first chapter. I try to get the first chapter completed before I go on much further. I'll have a few bits and pieces, but I try to get the first chapter completed and send it off to my primary beta so she can tell me if I'm completely off base before I get too far into the story and have to throw away 30,000 words, which would kill me.
Rick, how about you?
Unlike you guys, I never write out of order. I write chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and I never outline or plan what I'm going to write. I have a general idea. For me, the characters come first, and once I know those characters and come to love them, even if they're horrible people, they're the ones that guide me through the story, and I feel like oftentimes I'm taking a journey when I'm writing a book almost as much as when I read a book, because I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I have to go through it sequentially, step by step. I can't write the end or the middle or the first 12,000 words and go back. I have to write from beginning to the end.
Nothing wrong with that. I think it's interesting how everybody's process is just a little bit different. So to wrap things up here, I just wondered if you guys would tell us about any new or upcoming releases that you have, and I'll be sure to link those down below for our viewers. So Rick, you wanna handle this one first?
Well, I just happen to have
I didn't know Rick was mine.
my new release. Does this come up backwards on the screen?
No.
Not to me. No, I see it great.
And it's not all. This is Blink that just came out on Friday, and it's my most autobiographical and I think my most touching love story. And I'm really proud of this book, and it's kind of a second chance at love story. The first part takes place in Chicago in early 1980s, which is the part that's true, and all of that was true if you read the book. And then the second part happens in present day when these two men who missed their first opportunity of love find each other again after 30 years. So that's Blink.
Blink sounds great. I'll be sure to link that down below for anybody. Shae, how about you?
My latest release is Unfortunate Son. Unfortunately, I didn't grab a copy of it to show off, but it's got a very lovely picture of Travis Irons on the cover. The main character is a porn model who goes through some issues with his family, and in the process finds a nice, lovely young man who's totally not his type, but he falls for him anyway. And it's book one of a series of 3. The second one will be out in May, June. I don't have the exact release date for that one yet. And the secondary characters from book 1 are the main characters in book 2, as often happens, but they really took over, let me tell you. They're very active
times. Terry, how about you? What have you got coming up for us?
Well, February 13th is the re-release of Cherish, which is book 4 in the Faith, Love, and Devotion series, and that is packaged with a brand new novella called Blessed. So that will be out February 13th, just in time for my birthday. And then in May, the final book of the Faith, Love, and Devotion series is coming. So that's what I have.
Well, I just wanted to thank you guys so much for being here with us tonight. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate you letting me pick your brains with some of these random questions. Anybody have anything they want to say before we sign off?
No, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, good. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, and we'll see you all soon. Everybody, I'll have links for the books for Rick, Shae, and Terry down below for you. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Good night.
Night.